like this.
You like this?
Did I ever? I'm sorry. What about the help? Did I ever say that my prayer? Okay. Then no, I haven't said that yet. Let's go.
Good.
It's a big prayer. It's called help. Oh, stay tuned. That's it. And you heard it, and it works.
It's amazing.
It's amazing.
I think that last episode we had to kind of take a walk. That was just like that was a heavy duty episode there, but I think it really brings it's the gravity of the subject that we're talking about, honestly.
Yes.
And we think really in this episode there's going to be some clarity points for you. If you're feeling like, oh, that was too much, hang with us. There's some practical clarity points to where we're headed on the podcast, wouldn't you think?
Yes, and it's worth it.
It's worth it.
It's worth it.
It's so good.
Don't put the lid back on the boiling pot because you're like, this is too much. What I tried to do. No, it's still boiling. It's okay. Take it off.
Awesome.
Let it breathe.
All right, here we go. Hi, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Never for Nothing, the podcast with Susannah Baker. We've talked about 3 amazing tools. Susannah, why don't you take us through these tools that really help us rebuild when we talk about, in this section of the book, rebuilding our hearts, rebuilding ourselves, rebuilding our relationship. So the first one was lament. Let's talk about that. We were in review. That really sets up where we're headed today.
Yes, the first tool we talked about in restoring our hearts is lament, which basically is complaining, being honest and transparent before God about.
Which is okay.
It's okay.
It's okay.
You are free to complain.
Okay.
Which is crazy to God.
Permission.
Yes.
Permission.
Okay.
And then the next tool we talked about noticing patterns of behavior, kind of dynamics or ruts with others, and when you have major overreactions or even underreactions, when you should be reacting and you're not, why?
So it's patterns of personal behavior
Patterns
that you
of personal
recognize
behavior.
over and over again. You're like, yes, I'm this type of person.
Yes. And then number 3, with patterns with people. What kind of people are you consistently drawn to? If there are if there's consistent fruit of brokenness, why? What's going on in you that's not safe? What kind of person are you drawn to, perhaps? And quality or characteristic of person
That's
that
good.
can be traced back to your attachment pattern. And again, the goal isn't to kick everyone to the curb. It is to attach to a safe God and let Him transform your behavior.
And I think in the last episode where you talked about, it's not to kick everybody else to the curb. It's the finger is being pointed back at ourselves.
Yes.
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 So I think that's what I got out most out of the last one.
Yes.
So tell us where you're headed today.
So today I want to wrap up with the pausing in prayer. And I know we've kind of talked about that a little bit with lament, but I want to go back to this key idea of pausing and that Viktor Frankl quote that I mentioned, between stimulus and response is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. And that space, as a believer in Christ, as someone working towards earned secure attachment, always has to involve the Word of God and prayer. That has to be at the core of pausing in the space throughout our day. And so this final tool of just really thinking through, when am I going to pause in my day? Number 1, having a set time in morning or evening, or Sarah talked about when her kids were young, well, they went down for a nap. But where am I really going to pause and connect with the Lord in intentional, focused time of prayer and the Word? And I would say have it be at the same time, a consistent time. A friend of mine who's a neurofeedback therapist, she says repetition is king. Repetition for the brain is king. It is absolutely necessary. So doing something in the same way at the same time, that builds our habits, and habits build our lives. So build a habit and a pause of consistent prayer and being in God's Word. And then implementing this pause throughout your day. And this is something that I've learned sort of later in the process, but it's been hugely helpful because it's very hard when you are being triggered. When you have, as Sarah likes to say,
what's this mean?
Red flagging.
Yeah, yes. Let's dig into that a little bit more. You're triggering.
I'm just saying, not my teenage children, but if you were to have a
Yes.
teenage child that eye rolls or says something a little sassy, when you've just spent $100 on them, brought them Chick-fil-A, and taken them on
Is that the
vacation.
$100?
Yeah,
Chick-fil-A's like $50
That's
for
true.
our family.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
It's crazy.
So, yeah, go ahead. And has gotten more expensive.
Everything has.
Everything
there it
is
is.
more expensive.
But let's not go down that
Yeah.
road. That's another podcast, guys, and this is not the one. We are not solving that.
That's right. So eye roll, back to that. Triggering, red flag. Here we are.
If you have teenagers who trigger you and you just want to say, you are a spoiled brat and I don't like you and you're grounded
Awesome.
for forever.
You don't have to do that.
You don't have to do that. And that doesn't produce a lot of fruit.
Doesn't work
Doesn't
well.
work well.
So what's
I've been
But when
there
you feel
before.
that escalating, if you haven't been practicing pausing in in moments in your life where there are no triggers, the chances or likelihood of you pausing in the real triggering moments are next to nothing. Mm-hmm. So really taking time at the end of your quiet time, 1 or 2 times during your day, setting a reminder on your phone to breathe.
Yes.
Like download an audio app of the Bible. I have the ESV. Listen to a psalm being read aloud or a portion or chapter from the Gospels. Pay attention. How did Jesus respond to people? And then pause. I set a timer on my watch, 2 minutes. I breathe in for 4 seconds. I hold it for 4 seconds and I breathe out for 8 seconds. My friend who's a counselor, Chelsea Roden, taught me that. Like, if you breathe out longer than you breathe in, it signals to your brain that you're safe. And I know this may sound cheesy
No, it's fantastic.
but my ability to pause in triggering situations is directly related to my willingness to pause in non-triggering moments.
It'll calm your entire nervous system
Yes.
down. And when your teenager does, that literally, which I'm sure that recorded really well, but that literally is calming their nervous system
Yes.
down. Isn't that
Seriously?
interesting? Yes, I learned
That
that
noise?
from my counselor.
Nice.
Yes,
Oh my
thank
gosh.
you, Becky. So that
Shout
really
out.
will calm your nervous system down as you're breathing.
Yes. Or if you're on a text thread and you realize, oh my goodness, I left someone out or someone just left me out. Or
Leave the group chats. Moms, can I just say that?
Yeah, I mean-
girls, maybe guys too. The group chats get out of control.
yeah.
we don't do that.
I left the Pink Cheetah soccer mom group chat. I couldn't do it anymore, guys. I'm sorry. I love you, Pink Cheetahs,
Hey.
but I can't listen to another sock size
Yeah.
or this. Or it was just,
It's a lot, for sure.
It seems
Ding,
stars
ding,
on
ding,
a lot of
ding.
those. I'm only on baseball, really, group chats. And when we watch baseball, we're always going back and forth, and it's with my brothers and my dad, and it's just, that's awesome. But man, Star's phone is like blows up
Yeah.
it's okay to
from the
leave
group
it.
chats.
It's okay.
Or just silence it. But just
No, I silence, but I still leave.
still
And
leave.
but I do
You're
it a
brave.
gracious way. I say, "Hi, I'm too scatterbrained, can't keep up with the group chats. Love y'all. Thanks for your enthusiasm." Sarah Heineke has left the conversation.
That's okay.
I think that's-
You need to trademark that.
No, I think you
That
need
response.
T-shirts. Sarah has left the conversation.
Yes.
That's so good.
But then I'm the one that talks all the time too. So
I see.
I'm sure people need to leave my chats as well.
I left Sarah's comment. No, that's not good. Okay,
Okay, back to where were we?
Pausing.
pausing. That's right.
But I think just implementing when you have those triggering moments, realizing that someone is, a spouse or a child or a family member is triggering you, or you've been left out. That's a big trigger for me. I freeze on the inside.
Who for everybody? Yeah.
Yeah, for everybody.
Yeah.
We all are left out at certain points.
Yes.
Or we all realize we did something dumb or sent a text or an email we shouldn't have, or whatever it is. If you are not used to, it's a discipline, it's a practice, breathing, pausing, thinking through what you're going to say before you say it.
Oh,
You're
shoot.
not
Why'd
going to
you
do
have
it
to say that?
in the triggering moment. You're
We had
just
to get
not.
to this episode.
We did.
Before
Think
she
before
did
you
that.
speak.
No.
Darn.
Before you speak.
You know what
I
I do? I think about what I just said. Like I did. A second ago, I was like, oh, shoot, was that rude about commenting about leaving the Pink Cheetahs?
All the
I
pink
was like,
cheetahs.
oh, maybe I shouldn't have. I'm sorry. I love your spirit. Yay. But, but yes.
But I think our whole culture, right? We're so used to everything so instant.
Yes.
But stop. When you feel that I've learned when the overwhelming urge is to speak in a good way or in an angry way or in an anxious way or in whatever way, that means don't. And if you cannot obey it in the non-conflict moments or the non-adrenaline moments, it's going to be so much harder to do it in those times where the adrenaline is pumping or the shame is raging or whatever it is.
So what we're really doing was what you're saying is in those times of pause, we are practicing a repetitive thing to guard against.
Yes.
Or to fortify our spirits, fortify ourselves. So if we have those pauses of examination with the Lord, not just by ourselves, with the Lord, where we're lamenting, where we are examining ourselves, where we are doing the repetition, as you talk about, then we're going to be fortified for the conflict that's coming, or fortified for the moment when you need to exercise caution.
Yes.
And when you need to not step in it.
Yes.
It's a fantastic. You were going to say something, Sarah.
Well, what
to cut you off.
helps me is I heard Satan rushes, God leads. And so I think that so often I would rush to a response or a reaction that I was angry. And we will all do this. I mean, the other day, I'm like, I'm sorry, Caroline, my oldest. I mean, I was just so angry over something because I thought I had it all figured out. And then something happened last minute and it just triggered me. And I responded poorly. And if I would have paused and trusted, okay, God, will you help work this out? And I don't want to freak out. Then I wouldn't have had that same reaction.
Yes.
But I did have the poor reaction. So what did I do? I go upstairs, Caroline, I'm sorry. I messed up. And look, everything's going to work out. Let me just take a breath and let's talk through this. Tell me again.
Yes.
And then I would have a moment to listen to her instead of jumping to reaction because of my own frustrated expectation that wasn't met. So that has helped me to think, okay, God, help me lead. I mean, no, you lead. Help me follow.
Yeah.
And with that, I feel like then my mind can be quieted and I can trust God, because when I'm feeling anxious, what I do is I start trying to control the situation and I really become manipulative in a way, in as much as I don't want to say that, because I'm trying to control whether it's my children's safety or something that I'm freaking out about something that I shouldn't, or just controlling a situation because this isn't how I expected it to turn out.
Yeah.
Instead of going back to it, why am I anxious?
Yeah.
I'm really not trusting that God's going to take care of my tomorrows.
Yeah.
Or I'm not trusting that God's in control of my children's tomorrows. That's really, for me, where when I'm feeling anxious, if I can just replace that lie with that truth, then I don't spiral into trying to control.
Well, and I think that's the key. What pausing does is it helps you become curious and have time to ask the question, what am I really angry about? Most of the time, my anger, especially with my kids, is I'm afraid for them. I'm afraid they are going to make the wrong decision. I'm afraid they're going to do something, a mistake that I did, and I don't want them to do that. So I'm angry at them. I'm lashing out. And when I pause and I can walk away, I can then avoid the shame and the, heaping up a lot of condemnation or guilt or all the repair work that then is going to need to be done later, and understanding where is this anger coming. It has nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with me. Or I can understand when they're being disrespectful or they're being short, and I can pause long enough and circle back and later say, hey, I want to talk about that moment. What was going on? Well, actually, I had a really bad day at school. So-and-so said this to me and it really hurt me. And I made a bad grade. And and I'm like, oh, okay, well, it still doesn't. And then almost every time it ends up with them saying, I'm really sorry for how I behaved. Yeah. I'm so glad I didn't say anything. Now that happens like 20% of the time.
Okay.
80% of the time, I'm having to go back and apologize.
Yes.
But the pause enables you to figure out what's really going on with you and what's really going on with them.
That's great. So wise. So wise.
Learned after a lot of mistakes.
Yes. So. Something that the Lord has taught me recently was about his gentleness. And it was interesting, like last year, we were going through and focusing on an attribute of God in prayer, and it happened to be gentle. And I was like, oh my goodness, snooze fest. Why can we not gentle for real? I mean, couldn't it be sovereign or faithful or wise? I mean, why does it have to be gentle?
Snooze fest.
That's what I thought, snooze fest.
Yeah.
And it was so interesting that God used that exact word, gentle. And he showed me, I'm going to show you what it looks like to be led by a gentle father. Because I didn't know that. My father had a lot of amazing characteristics, but gentle was not one of them. Charming, bright, funny, all these things, telling people, suffered no fools, but I mean, gentle was not one of
On the
those.
list.
But God, my Father is. And you know what he does? He gently leads. He doesn't push. He doesn't rush. It's really sweet how he does that. So it wasn't a snooze fest, guys. To learn.
The pauses had purposes.
The
pauses had purpose. One of my favorite authors says, punctuation is there for a reason. If you read, any paragraph in any book or Restore, we go through Susannah's book, editing process was a big deal. If you don't have pauses, commas, you have no full stops. The language doesn't make sense. It's with the spaces, it's with the punctuation, it's with those moments in between that draw out the meaning. Or I would say not draw out the meaning, but they allow you to process the information.
Yes.
I think that's just a fantastic thing.
Developing strength in us. Because another snooze fest for me or things I never really wanted to study, was the Beatitudes and meekness. Blessed are the meek. What? Why can't it be blessed are the beautiful and the strong and the
sovereign?
And exactly. Why did it have to be meek? And what a definition I heard of it was strength under God's control. So that could be, as we're able to pause and throw up a prayer. It does not have to be a serious prayer. It can literally be a prayer called help. That's it.
Yeah.
Lord, help.
Yeah.
And then he will. And that's what it looks like to develop meekness in our life. And
really that a pausing is saying, I am willing to be led, to your point. If we are, I am really bad at implementing margin in my life. I can rush from thing to thing. But if I don't, I'm trying to learn how to put margin, because if I don't have that, how do I expect God to slow me down or change my pace if I'm not stopping long enough to let him lead?
It's a punctuation problem.
Yeah.
No, seriously.
Yes.
It's a run-on sentence, if not.
Yeah. And I actually was thinking about one of my favorite books is Prince Caspian in the Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis. And the other day I was thinking back on the character of Lucy and this interaction she has with Aslan, and he's the Christ figure in the book. He's a lion. But it just represents to me, looking back, the journey from insecure to secure attachment. And she is the youngest of 4 children. She's the baby, but she sees Aslan the most often. She's the most tuned in. And he comes to her, she sees him, and she instinctively knows, I'm supposed to follow. And they're trying, the 4 children are trying to get to Narnia, to this place to help save the battle, to save the day. And they all think they should be going a different way. But Lucy sees Aslan, and she doesn't follow because the others say, no, that's not the right way. And so she goes with them. Well, they end up in a really dangerous situation. They get shot at by arrows. They're really defeated and discouraged. They go to sleep, and he appears to her at night. And I love their encounter. And Lucy, he basically says, why didn't you follow me? She's like, well, I couldn't. I'm the youngest, and no one would let me. And he starts kind of growling at her. She's like, you mean I should have done it anyway if no one else was coming? And he basically says, yeah. And she says, well, if I would have, what would have happened? And he says, that's not for you to know. No one gets to know what would have happened. He said, but now you're going to have to go wake up the others and follow me. And she says, oh dear, I was so pleased at finding you again. And I thought you'd let me stay. And I thought you'd come roaring in and frighten all the enemies away like the last time. And now everything is going to be horrid. And Aslan says, it's hard for you, little one, but things never happen the same way twice. So Lucy buried her head in his mane to hide from his face, but there must have been magic. She could feel lion strength going into her. Quite suddenly, she sat up. I'm sorry, Aslan, she said. I'm ready now. Now you are a lioness, said Aslan, and now all of Narnia will be renewed. But come, we have no time to lose. And she has to go back and wake everyone up, and they're grouchy, and they end up following her, and they all end up, it's the right way, and they all end up seeing Aslan, and all of Narnia is renewed. And I was like, isn't that like the journey of earned secure attachment? You can't control other people. You just have to purpose to follow him, even when it's hard, in the pausing moments. And when you do so, all of life is renewed for you, for the people around you. But it starts by stopping long enough to interact with him, to change your course, to change your ways, to bury your head in his mane and receive the strength you need for the next step. And he shows you the way. And it's really beautiful.
God, it's so good. So great. Amazing words.
I love good old C.S. Lewis.
Is that part of the book? Like, and then the part where they throw the ring in the fire, that's after that, right? And that.
Yeah.
I'm mixing my
Mixing.
epic.
Mixing.
Oh, sorry.
Tolkien and Lewis here.
Yep.
They're all worth reading, that's for sure.
So good.
All worth reading. I tell you, these episodes leading up to this point have all been so impactful, but I think it really gets down to wonderfully to this pause that can happen. And you've unpacked that so beautifully for us and the importance of that for us as we head into our final episode of the season.
Yeah, wow.
Our final episode of the season. We are excited about maybe what the Lord would say here in our final moments as we look back on what we would have liked to have known when we started the journey.
Yes.
So it's pretty interesting.
Yes.
But listeners, always, we thank you for joining us. If you'd like to know any more information on this podcast or resources from Susannah, we want you to be able to find those at her website, SusannahBaker.com. We thank you so much for your time invested in this. We are praying for you. We're praying for that pause in your life as well. We're going to see you on our final episode of this season of the podcast called Never for Nothing with Susannah Baker.
Thanks for listening.
So we talked about 3 key tools, and Susannah's going to kind of review those. It starts off with lament, Santa.
Santa.
Yes.
Santa. Santa Claus and Kobe.
gosh.
Is he coming with Kobe? Golly.
Coming in Cody's sleigh.
Oh, Kobe? Who?
I'm sorry. I keep drawing that joke out, but...